Howdy, folks. It's your old pal David Cobb coming at you on Democracy in Action. This is our weekly show on the Green News Network. And with a hat tip to Gil Scott-Heron, remember, the revolution may not be televised, but it will be brought to you over the sources of non-corporately filtered news, information, and analysis like the Green News Network, like the program Democracy in Action. So if you like what you're hearing, hell, even if you don't like what you're hearing, but appreciate real talk being happening where you have an opportunity to actually learn more about the Green Party outside of the corporate media, make sure to comment on this, like this, share this on your other pages. Let's continue to build this audience. It is my distinct pleasure to bring into this conversation, onto this program, Samantha Pree-Stinson, who is running for city council in the city of Minneapolis. Sam Pree-Stinson, welcome to Democracy in Action.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. A pleasure to be with you.
So, Sam, I got the chance to meet you and really roll deep with you in Minneapolis at the Democracy Convention. And I want to give our viewers an opportunity to get to know you a little bit like I did. So before we get into the politics of it, before we get in specifically to your campaign, I want to back up a bit and have you introduce yourself to the viewers.
Thank you. Well, again, my name is Samantha Pree-Stinson, and I'm running for city council here in Minneapolis because I can and I should. We cannot rely on and wait for the cavalry to come. We are the cavalry. And so I really decided to run. There was kind of a series of events that occurred after Trump was elected, one being called the N-word on my way to work by a truck full of cowards on my way to work. And then also the incumbent for this seat deciding to run for mayor. And it was clear that it was time to have a new voice with new ideas that put people first. And so I was very encouraged and determined that I was going to run.
And, you know, Sam, you come into this in an interesting way. You are a social change agent, but you're also a mother, you're a wife. You've had an interesting background. Tell us a bit about your background.
Yes. So besides being a mother and a wife, which tomorrow is my 14-year anniversary, I'm also a veteran. Yes, thank you. And I'm also a veteran of the United States Army, and I've been a lifelong educator and have worked in the healthcare field. And that's really kind of what my background is, as well as program management. So really all things associated with people, helping people, wanting people to reach their full potential. So that's really what I have a strong background in, but also in advocating for people who feel like they've lost their voice or they never had it or it's falling on deaf ears, and really being a way to amplify their voices and really listen to what they're saying so that we can put their ideas and their issues to action via solutions.
So, you know, Sam, so your background, both as a veteran of the United States Army, a person who worked in healthcare, who's worked in project management, what was interesting to me was bringing all those things to bear. When you and I talked, you flirted for a hot second with the Democratic Party, but chose to roll with the Green Party. Let's talk about that. What made you decide to roll deep with the Green Party?
That's right. A couple of years ago, maybe more like 5 or 6 years ago, I had decided to start getting more involved in actual politics and not just within community groups and leading in that way. And so I had actually served as the Senate District Vice Chair for our Senate District here in Minneapolis for a while before I realized that it was a check the box. She's Black, she's Mexican, she's a mother, she's a veteran, she's a female, check, 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 check. But it was very clear that I didn't feel that there was any real want to put me in a leadership position other than being support. And I've never really rolled that way.
The Democratic Farm Labor Party, DFL, there in the state of Minnesota, you felt like we're using you as a token to just put your face up there to check things off, but you did not feel that they were really interested in your ideas, your leadership, your vision for the kind of world you want to live in.
Exactly. And so when I decided to run for office, I had toyed with the idea of, do I want to run independent of any party, or is there another party out there that I identify with, but that also really appreciates grassroots and starting from the bottom and understanding that leadership grows at the bottom and you push it all the way to the top. And that's how I found the Green Party.
And when we met at that event in the backyard there, when you talked about first reading the Green Party's platform and the 4 pillars of peace, justice, democracy, and ecology, how did you react whenever you read what the Green Party actually stood for?
Well, what I loved about it is that it's a place that anybody can call home. There's even people that have defected from the Republican Party who have come over to the Green Party, because those 4 ideals are, I call it the good people party sometimes, because those are 4 things that you would teach your children. That's what I teach my 3 sons. Being fiscally responsible and caring about the environment, approaching things diplomatically and using your words and not being violent. And grassroots democracy. And so to me, when I saw those 4 things, it was very clear to me the direction that I wanted to go. And I really loved that here in Minnesota, they were really building their party and trying to get new members and allow people to lead. You didn't need to come in with some long resume. You actually could come in and your ideas were appreciated and you could run with them.
And what I also appreciated, Sam, is that you had a history of working in social change in non-governmental organizations or civil society or just other groups. I mean, you didn't just jump right into electoral politics. You actually have a history of working with other groups for social change. And I really liked how you said to you it was just a natural extension that you would get into electoral politics to help shape the policies that you were already trying to influence.
Exactly. Realizing that, you can talk about them all day and make your phone calls and send your emails, but unless you're actually leading the charge, you cannot rely on someone else to do it. And so in previous experiences, really my advocacy in Minneapolis started with them wanting to shut down a school. And that's really where the activism kind of started and where I had spent a lot of time, but also in the workplace, looking at diversity metrics and understanding that we weren't hiring enough across the board to get those diverse voices. There was a bottleneck with people of color, veterans, disabled, pretty much anyone that would be considered to be on the margins, being able to get into those senior and executive leadership roles. And so chairing the Global Women's Network as a networking chair, and also our local African Descent Network in the workplace, to really start developing metrics so that we could hold managers accountable and also give them the training to recognize why these things were important to the organization.
Folks, you're watching the Green News Network. This show is called Democracy in Action. I'm your host, David Cobb, and we're speaking with Samantha Pree-Stinson. She is running for city council in Minneapolis on the Green Party ticket. So, Sam, I do want to make sure to let folks know, if y'all want to ask Sam a question directly or make a comment about what you're hearing, please write those comments in. Technical producer Michael O'Neill will be following that. He'll be feeding any comments or questions. So if you have any that are very specific to Sam, please do ask about it. In fact, Lana jumped on it already to say, Sam, what is your definition of, quote, fiscally responsible?
Well, for one thing, you need people elected that actually know how to create a budget. They've managed a budget, high impact dollars, and that they understand how to prioritize those dollars. Specifically what we've seen in Minneapolis, but this is true nationwide, you get a lot of people that tend to govern based on the few, and those few tend to be big ticket donors, but they're not actually governing and creating proactive budgets that prioritize the actual needs of their constituents. And that has led to the large economic disparity that we see specifically in Minneapolis between North and South Minneapolis and other parts of the city where we don't invest. And if you're not going to invest, you're not going to get a return.
So Margaret asked the hard question, and one, as an election integrity activist, I really appreciate, even though it's really hard. Margaret says, what's your plan to combat the machine and the money? And how do we overcome election fraud? You can be the best candidate, get the most votes, and still not get elected. So first, what's your plan to combat the Democratic farm labor machine? And secondly, What about the concerns around election fraud, or what's the situation like that in Minneapolis? So really a two-part question.
So one, we're fortunate to have ranked choice voting in Minneapolis, which helps because it means the candidate that has the most broad support will win. So you don't have to be everybody's first. In fact, if you have more broad support between being a first, second, and third choice for folks, you're more likely to get elected that way because you have broad support. So that helps. I call that a baby step because ultimately I would like to see proportional representation. It's something that I stand for. So this is a start on the right track. Other things, as far as voter fraud, is we have some groups here that actually go out and they educate voters, our residents here, on what ranked choice voting means and what it means for them and how it keeps our elections more fair. Money wise, what I'm supporting, and actually there's starting to be some momentum here. I got it. All of the candidates got an email the other day, was in regards to having public funding. So Seattle is actually doing this already, but where all residents actually get vouchers, that amount is determined by the city government, but you get these vouchers so that regardless of whether you have money to donate or not, you get these vouchers that you can send to any candidate you want to support their campaign. And that is another thing that I support, to get this big corporate money out of the elections.
And, the other thing, Margaret, I want to let you know that in the city of Minneapolis and in the entire state of Minnesota, they really, thanks to a group called Citizens for Election Integrity, that came up out of the recount of 2004 in Ohio that I and the Green Party led. Minnesota is one of those states where they vote completely on paper ballots. Number two, they have a robust audit, and there are very solid recount provisions. So, Minnesota, if it's not the single best state, it's one of the best states for both audits and recounts that are available, and they vote all on paper. And Sam, you're getting other questions coming in. Tom asked a good one that says, who is your greatest political hero?
So I have two, one past and one present. One is Shirley Chisholm, who was the first African-American woman to run for president, and her phrase was unbought and unbossed. And the reason that I chose Shirley Chisholm is specifically for that reason. Even though she was a Democrat, and that's fine, that's where her ideologies were at that time. And that's fine that she spoke her truth to power through that vehicle. But ultimately, what she did and what she stood for, against everything that was stacked up against her, for her to stand up and say that she really was a person for the people, it doesn't get much better than that.
And I want you to say those two words slower and clearer, because they're so powerful. I still remember the first time I saw that visual with those two words. Tell us, your political hero Shirley Chisholm's slogan was?
Unbought and unbossed.
I love that. So that's your past. Tell us your current.
My current is actually somebody who's running for mayor in Minneapolis, and her name is Nakima Levy-Pounds. And the reason why for that, there's a lot of reasons. She bucked against the DFL system. She does still identify as a Democrat, but within the state, the powers that be, she wasn't with it, and she stepped away from that. And she's not only is she running for office, but she also mentors people that come on her team, very much so like I do. So it's not just joining a campaign and helping someone to win. It's also what is the mutual self-interest in that, and really developing people and mentoring them so that they themselves can build power and maybe run for office or do other things within the community. She actually was pregnant during this electoral race that we're in right now. She flew out to the NRA march 3 weeks before her due date and marched and stood there, and she gave a speech, flew back, had a baby, and then is back on the campaign trail. It doesn't get more determined than that. Those are the type of people that we need to motivate us to show that they are serious about caring about people and putting people first over profit.
I followed a little bit Nikita because I know that she was a real leader in Black Lives Matter, and of course, Minneapolis was at the cutting edge for all sorts of really bad reasons because of the murders that have happened there, terrorizing black folks. And so, I tell and say to people like Nikita, when you join the Green Party, and you will, I will not say I told you so, because I think Nikita, right? I mean, I think Nikita is just on a trajectory. I mean, she's already seeing the corporate control of the Democratic Farm Labor Party there in Minnesota. She's already seeing how that machine actually operates. I just feel like she's going to end up in the Green Party.
That is a possibility. That is a possibility. I'd love to see it. That's for sure. And you bring up a really good point, David. The Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minneapolis has been in all of the seats, minus we've had some Green Party folks in and out. But we actually had, at one point, we had 2 other Green Party members on that city council who were actually gerrymandered out of those seats when they redrew the lines. And the Democratic Farmer Labor Party has been in charge in this city for about 50 years now. And the fact of the matter is that we can't even blame the Republicans. What we're seeing right now is a direct result of their leadership or lack thereof.
So I'm going to use that opportunity. Before I do, though, I do want to let you know that David, not me, but a different David, had written in to say thank you for talking about ranked choice voting, and we definitely need more education about it. So I'm going to ask you, give us your quick explanation of how ranked choice voting works, Samantha Pree-Stinson.
So when you go to the ballot box, you're basically going to see what you traditionally see, but you'll see it 3 times. So you'll see the same list of names 3 times, one under a column marked 1, one under a column marked 2, the other marked under a column that says 3. So you will rank the people that you are familiar with, that you've learned about. You'll rank however many candidates there are. You'll only get to rank 3, and you rank them in order of preference by filling in the bubble 1, 2, and 3 underneath those columns. You cannot, talking about myths that are out there, you cannot vote for the same person 3 times and somehow they get 3 times the power. It doesn't work that way. You can traditionally vote the same way you always do and just vote for 1 or vote for 2 because maybe you don't have a third. So it really gives you a choice, and it enables you to say, well, there's 2 great candidates or there's 3, and I would be happy if either one of them were in there, but this is my order of preference.
And I really like ranked choice voting because it empowers the voter to fully express her or his opinion on the candidates. My first choice is, my second choice is, my third choice is. And it really is as easy as 1, 2, 3, because all you have to do is count.
It really is. And it's a mind shift. It's a shift of mindset because we're so used to only supporting one person. But you can donate to more than one candidate. You can door knock for more than one candidate. You shouldn't feel guilted. And if you do, then you're probably rolling with the wrong candidate. But you can support multiple candidates, and you should.
So, I want to make sure, Samantha, that we give you a chance to talk about what are the campaign issues that you are running on in this election.
So primarily it is housing, transportation, energy, policing and safety, our arts and culture, business, pardon me, and addressing cost.
All right, so let's break those down one at a time. You started with housing. So tell us, Sam Pree-Stinson, your plans for Minneapolis and housing issues.
Well, our current state of housing is that we have a, we have a 2% low income vacancy rate that we need to fix. The reason why we continually have housing issues in Minneapolis that seem like we're chasing our tail is because when we allow developers to come in and we negotiate these contracts, those units, those units that are assigned to be affordable actually expire, usually between 5 to 7 years, but there's some variability there. So when those contracts expire, those tenants end up getting a letter saying that their units are going up to market rate. And it's very maddening, and it's something that a lot of people don't know. So we need to change that. We need to start building.
Again, a policy of a city that's completely controlled by the Democratic Party.
Correct. So we need to start governing for our people, and we need to start governing by the numbers. We have the data that shows the breakdown of the socio-economic status of our residents. And so we need to be building for who's here. We've continually built to attract people that aren't here yet that we want to come, but we have not focused on our residents that are already here. So we need to keep it local and address this when we're talking about building density. We need to make sure that there are certain percentages that will be built affordable and stay affordable. But in addition to that, I also want to create homeowner pathways, because we can build all the density in the world, but people should be able to buy a home. They should not be looking out their window at that empty lot thinking that that's not something that's for them. So that's another piece of this housing equation that I'm going to focus on, is making sure that we have strong homeownership pathways.
I love the fact that you're getting very concrete and specific. Let's go now to transportation. That was another issue that you said you were running on.
So our issues in Minneapolis with transportation is access. So in my part of the city, when I was still working before I started running my campaign, it would take me one bus to get to work. My colleague who lived in North Minneapolis, which is a predominantly Black area, 75% of the residents there are Black, she would have to take 3, sometimes 4 buses to get to and from work. When I'm only a 5-minute driving distance from her, would only have to take 1 bus. So we have access issues. The other issue with that is cost. And this is something that we will need to be working intergovernmentally on with the state and also this Met Council that we have in Minneapolis. They recently did a 25% hike in the transit cost. The problem that I have with that is if you create a social program so that people that are low income will be able to get a discount on their fare, all of that money that we use to create this useless program to do that, we could have just not raised the fare by 25 cents. Not to mention that we're operating under a surplus in this state. So that whole concept of where we raise something and then we act like we're throwing a bone at the poor is absolutely ridiculous. We give people just enough to feel like they can get by, and it's just not good enough.
So the next issue that I think that you talked about was income inequality, or
energy and environmental.
Energy and environmental. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. So we have a system called the HERC. It's an incinerator. It resides, I'm talking about environmental justice. It resides in that north part of the city where 75% of the residents are people of color.
Once again, a toxic incinerator going into a people of color, low income community.
That's right. In addition to a company called Northern Metals, who has been dumping pollutants, it's raised the lead levels to where they're still within the normal limits, but they're still more elevated than what we would like. And there are people who have asthma, who have developed asthma, other respiratory issues, and along a certain corridor from where my ward goes into this other ward, there's been an elevated level of cancer cases. And they're going to vacate, but they were given several years to do that. And the money that they paid in is not staying within the community. We should be developing community health monitoring programs so that we can track these cases and find out if we can trace them back to those pollutants. And again, we're failing our residents, and it does have a radius effect. So even though those two things do not exist right within my ward, they still have a radius effect, and they affect my ward just like it does our sister ward over north.
So I want to let you know, Terry writes in to say, best wishes, Samantha. You're great. Thank you so much for getting involved and running as a Green, which I will say as well. So the next campaign issue that you're running on, Sam?
That would be policing and safety. And so what we need to do is stop making excuses and stop trying to solve these surface issues by just treating the symptoms. We have to get at the root cause. And the root cause of this is really the culture of policing. We need to reimagine and we need to reinvent what policing should look like that would work for our residents, because this is not just a people of color issue. A white woman has also been killed now. So this is an issue of policing, the way that we're training our force. Again, that intergovernmental piece, it's preempted by the state for us to require them to have to live in the neighborhoods that they police, and also to require them to carry their own liability insurance. That costs us millions of dollars alone with the incompetent policing that we see. And it also puts our good officers at risk as well, so that they're not able to do their job. So that's one piece of policing, but then also just general safety. and asking our residents, what does safety look like for you? And really listening to them so that we can develop something that is robust and representative of our needs as Minneapolitans.
You know, one of the things, Sam, on this conversation, all the conversations I had with you when we met, I appreciated how you consistently went back to, well, let's ask the community, let's ask the constituents. You know, the way that you so quickly integrate the idea of really taking it to the grassroots and trying to empower people to solve problems is one of the things that I really admire about your campaign. I think you had one other issue that you're running on.
I did. And before we get to that quickly, I did also speak on Democracy Now! As well as RT America about these policing issues. And something that that really struck me is that we have residents that are scared to dial 911. And that's just an egregious injustice to me. And also realizing that we have to understand why people are scared to dial 911. We cannot label them as conspiracy theorists and say that people are being unreasonable. There is a reason why they feel the way that they do.
Minneapolis
and we
police
should
are
be
killing
concerned.
folks. That's a perfectly reasonable response.
Right. If you can't call in 911 and say that you think that somebody is being raped without being shot, that is a real issue. And body cams aren't going to help it. We need to get to the root cause and rip it out and cultivate something new that integrates our community so that we have a community policing model that works for us. The way that we've always done it is not going to cut it.
And I do want to thank you for bringing it up. So Samantha Pree-Stinson has been on as a leader and community member and both RT America and Democracy Now! Some of you will remember that Philando Castillo was in Minneapolis. That's where that incident happened. So thank you for being a leader on that. I do want to make sure that we get an opportunity to hear from on your last issue, Sam.
Yes. So I'll kind of lump them all together, but this part of our city is known for the arts district. And so we need to make sure that our arts and culture is not being taken away by allowing developers to come in and again push out who's here and take our culture of what makes us who we are, our identity, and pushing that away. So that means supporting our micro and small business owners. And in doing that, we're also supporting workers. We already are supporting wages. $15 an hour was passed. The socialist candidate who's also running in my race was a large part of that. But that is a piece of it. If we just rely on wages to think it's going to fix the problem, we're going to have a bigger problem. We have got to start addressing cost. If we address cost, we'll be able to, again, put something together that is robust, that puts systems in place to make sure that as the wages are continually going up over the next 5 to 6 years, that we're also looking at cost of operating our business, cost of building, the cost of living, the quality of life, all of that is rolled into one and it has value. So we cannot just rely on one variable.
So, you did bring up, I wanted to make sure that we touch this, and I appreciate you bringing it up yourself. But in your district or in your ward, there are a couple of Democrats running, but also you as a Green, but Ginger Jensen of the Socialist Alternative is running in that same ward. So how did that end up happening, and why not, run in different wards? What's that all about?
I honestly couldn't say. I do know that I was the first person to announce that I was running on December the 28th of last year. And I've actually met with all of the other candidates except for one. And the explanation I got was just people didn't know. They weren't aware.
Because, from my perspective, and viewers of Democracy in Action know well that I am a big proponent of a red-green alliance. The most exciting campaigns for me are the ones where reds and greens are actually finding ways to work together. So what you're saying is that this was not a problem, or is this a underlying problem, or is this just that there was not sufficient collaboration and coordination, or something else?
Mm-hmm. Well, the kind of green-red alliance that you're talking about is something that's a little newer on the table in Minnesota. as far as the work that's being done in building coalitions that make sense for the work that we're trying to do moving forward, being third-party entities, or in this case, the specific group she's working with is not a minor party. It's a group at this point. But ultimately, I don't see it as problematic. I see it as a good thing that people have a choice. They have different opinions, different platforms, different ideologies to look at that are not their norm. And so I think it's really challenging our voters to really re-examine what they thought politics were and what they could expect from their politicians. So I actually see it as a good thing.
Fantastic. I love that answer. So, Samantha, the 30 minutes has just flown by. I do want to give you a chance for any final thoughts or words to the audience.
I would just like to tell everyone that if you like what you're hearing, make sure to support, because even though I'm here in Minneapolis, Greens have to win at the local level. And regardless of where those Greens are, when they win at the local level, they are driving our national strategy. So please, if you can, make sure that you donate. You can remote phone bank, get involved. You can go to Pree43, Preefor, and the number 3.com to donate or volunteer. And then you can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Pree43 is my handle on all three of those social media platforms. And again, my vision is a self-sustaining, future-focused city that is Minneapolis, that is fiscally responsible, that puts its people first, and make sure that people are heard, they are seen, and they are valued.
Samantha Pree-Stinson, thank you so much for being a guest on Democracy in Action. Technical Director Michael O'Neill has shared with me that he has already put your links and pinned them at the top of the comments. So folks, when you share this with other folks, Samantha's details for Facebook and Instagram and Twitter will all be there. I do want to thank you, Sam, for being a guest. I want to thank Michael O'Neill, Technical Director, who makes this program happen every day. Every week. And I also want to thank you, the viewer. We're up to now somewhere between 8, 9, usually 10,000 views, which shows that there is an audience, that people are hungry. There is an appetite for real conversation around what is happening in this world and what we can do as social change agents to engage electoral politics, not exclusively, but as a tool. So thank you. Please continue to comment, share. Let's continue to build the party and support the party that supports the planet. Peace.